Right now, there's a good chance you have more money in your bank account than Mr. Beast. Not a trick. Not adjusted for anything. The most famous YouTuber alive, the first person in history to pass 500 million subscribers, told the Wall Street Journal in January that he has negative money, that he's borrowing just to get by. In his words, everyone watching has more money in their bank account than he does, once you set aside the value of his company, because that value, as he put it, doesn't buy me McDonald's in the morning. And he's admitted to borrowing money from his mom to pay for his own wedding. This is a man the business press says is worth around $2.6 billion. So one of three things must be true. Either he's lying, or the smartest entertainer of his generation is terrible with money, or the word rich doesn't mean what most of us think it means. To find out which, you have to see where those billions actually live. Because here's the thing, they don't live anywhere. There's no vault, no secret account. His fortune is ownership, shares of Beast Industries, the company behind his channels, his chocolate brand Feastables, and everything else he's built. Not long ago, investors paid around $300 million for a small slice of that company, a deal that priced the whole business at over $5 billion. The moment it happened, every share got that price tag, including his. His paper net worth jumped overnight, and not a single new dollar landed in his bank account. That's all a net worth is, a price tag on what you own, not a pile of money. You probably know someone like this already, a couple whose house is worth $500,000 who still wince at the price of dinner. It's the same accounting, just a wilder scale. Fair enough. But the price tag isn't the whole story, because real cash does pour through this company. Roughly $500 million of revenue in a single year. So where does it all go? Almost all of it goes straight back in. A single main channel video costs $3 to $4 million to make. Mr. Beast's own estimate is that the company spends about $250 million a year on content. And then there's Beast Games, his Amazon game show. Amazon reportedly put up more than $100 million, and it still wasn't enough. He poured in tens of millions of his own money on top and lost it. His review of his own decision: "I'm an idiot." Add it all up, and his company has lost money 3 years in a row. Not because the machine is broken, because he keeps feeding it. Which raises a strange question. If the most subscribed channel in YouTube history loses money, what part of this empire actually earns? Here's the twist: the chocolate. In 2024, his media business, the videos, the shows, lost around $80 million. Feastables, the chocolate brand, sold roughly $250 million worth of product and turned a real profit. Sit with that for a second. Inside the same company, a chocolate bar out-earns the biggest channel on the planet. And that reveals the machine's true shape. The videos aren't the product. The videos are the advertisement, watched by more people than any ad on earth, for things he owns. He doesn't just rent his audience out to sponsors and pocket a fee. He points the audience at his own companies. Attention is the ad. Ownership is the asset. Once you see that, a story from 2022 stops sounding insane. Someone offered Mr. Beast $1 billion for the channel and the companies. Cash. He was 24. He could have retired that afternoon and never worked again. He said no. His reasoning? Sell, and he'd spend the rest of his life working for his own YouTube channel. His price, if he ever did sell? 10, maybe 20 billion. And this is the real reveal. Mr. Beast being broke isn't a scandal. It's a strategy, and it's the oldest one in the book. In 1997, Jeff Bezos told Amazon's first shareholders plainly that profits would have to wait, because everything would be reinvested into becoming the market leader. Amazon spent the better part of 2 decades barely showing a profit, and compounded into one of the most valuable companies ever created. The richest people alive run some version of this play. Famously tiny salaries, wealth locked in shares, borrowing when they need cash. We've covered that game in another video. Fortunes aren't earned and saved. They're owned and compounded. Cash sits still. Ownership grows. So how does he actually stack up against ordinary rich people? There are about 58 million millionaires in the world, and roughly 2,600 new ones every single day. Most are what the bank UBS calls everyday millionaires, worth $1 to $5 million, mostly a home and retirement savings. Comfortable, diversified, spendable. Billionaires? A few thousand people on the entire planet. On paper, MrBeast out-owns more than 99.9% of the world's millionaires, while holding less cash than nearly all of them. Forbes even named him the world's highest-paid creator at $85 million in a single year, money attributed to him and recycled straight back into the company he owns. Both things are true at once. But here's the honest part. A valuation is just what the last investor paid. If the growth stops, the paper fortune shrinks with it. Amazon's playbook worked. Most companies that copy it die trying. MrBeast isn't holding a fortune. He's holding one gigantic, concentrated bet on himself. Which brings this back to you, because the principle scales down, even if the madness doesn't. Wealth doesn't come from what you earn. It comes from what you own that grows. A business, shares in one, a home, anything that compounds while you sleep. A salary feels rich on payday, then resets to zero every month. Ownership feels like nothing for years, and then it's everything. That couple with the paid-off house? They're running a calm, sane version of MrBeast's bet. You don't need his risk tolerance. You just need the split he lives by. Spend less of your income on feeling rich and put more of it into becoming rich. And the gap between those two lives is smaller than it looks. Picture two people on the same salary. One upgrades the car, the phone, the apartment, a monthly payment for everything. The other lives one notch below their income and buys a slice of something every month. Shares, a small business, their own skills. For 10 years, you can't tell them apart on the street. In year 11, one of them owns things that pay them. The other owns a payment history. So here's the billion-dollar question, literally. A guaranteed billion, today, walk away forever. Or stay broke, keep the machine, and bet everything on yourself. Which one are you? Tell me in the comments.